condition here in Northern Ireland. So a massive, massive condition that's on the rise each year. So I do thank you for letting me come this morning and talking to the organisation. This week's a massive week for the charity because on Thursday it is World Diabetes Day. So around the world, people are highlighting the issue, the rise of it, and raising that awareness worldwide. So we'll talk about what the condition is. I've got a little short video, and hopefully that should play. Let me know if the
What
audio
is
works there.
diabetes? Diabetes is a serious condition where your blood sugar levels, also known as blood glucose levels, are too high. It's diagnosed from a blood test. There are two main types, type 1 and type 2, which is the most common, and lots of other types like gestational diabetes, type 3C, and MODY. The causes and symptoms depend on the type of diabetes you have. Diabetes happens because of a problem with a hormone called insulin. When you eat or drink, any carbohydrates you've had turned into glucose, a type of sugar. Insulin acts like a key to unlock the cells to let the sugar in, to give you energy. If you have diabetes, this can't happen, so sugar builds up in the blood. High blood sugars over time can cause problems in almost every part of your body, from your brain to your feet. So treatment is about trying to keep blood sugars within a target range. Being as active as possible, eating healthily, and going for regular health checks will help you do this. Some people will also need to take insulin or other medication and check their blood sugars regularly. Lots of things can affect blood sugars, so it can be tricky to balance. But it's possible to lead a full life. It's about being in tune with your body and learning what works for you. You can get more support from your medical team and us here at Diabetes UK.
So that little information video is a quick snapshot of the two main types of diabetes. So I'll break it down even further and I'll go at a slower pace. So diabetes is a serious condition and it happens whenever your blood sugar levels, your glucose levels are far too high. And an easy way of understanding this, but think about somebody that doesn't have diabetes. So the video was showing what happens when we eat carbohydrates. Whenever we eat carbohydrates, we start to break it down into glucose in the bloodstream. Now, in normal processes, the pancreas produces a hormone called insulin, and that takes that blood glucose from the blood and moves it across to the cells where it needs to go, wherever that be in the body, wherever that be, might be our muscles, our eyes, and other places and other organs. So insulin, you can kind of describe it as a key, and it opens up that door and allows that glucose to be transferred over and give that energy. With somebody with diabetes, this process is not the same, it is damaged, and we're going to go into detail the differences between the two main types. So somebody with type 1, you can imagine they're not producing any insulin whatsoever. So you can say this little infographic is they're producing no keys. So that means that door to the cells remains forever locked. So you can imagine the blood sugar levels are going to get higher and higher and higher because that person is producing no insulin whatsoever. Type 2 is a little bit different. There is insulin being produced, but there's a bit of resistance towards it. It might not be as effective as it once was, and it's more of a progressive order. You can kind of imagine the lock is a little bit rusty, and it might need some kind of help to open it up. So breaking it down, that's the difference between the two main types. One produces insulin, and it's not as effective as the others. And type 1 produces no insulin whatsoever. As the video mentioned, there are other rare types of diabetes, but these occur on a much lower incidence. So the main type is type 2. You can see roughly about 90% of people in the population has type 2. A smaller percentage has type 1, so roughly about 8. And then the rare types, you might not have heard them talked about mostly in the main, but these rare types include gestational diabetes, so that's diabetes during pregnancy, diabetes 3C, where there's actually characteristics of both 1 and 2. There's diabetes brought about by other conditions such as cystic fibrosis. So these are much, much smaller, and that's why you normally hear about people talking about type 1 and type 2. So the causes of type 1, so there's been a lot of research going in to figuring out what the exact cause is with type 1. And the kind of the simple answer is it is unknown. It is really unknown. The things that we do know that type 1 is an autoimmune disorder. So your body sees its pancreas as a foreign body and it does attack it and attacks its beta cells to produce the insulin. Family history can increase the risk, but definitely not as high as type 2, which I'll discuss. The research is suggesting that it could be down to environmental factors such as severe infection. We are seeing a lot more adults come forward with type 1 in the years since COVID, and the link is being established between that infection and your body attacking its pancreas. Type 2, we know a lot more of. So some of these things we can't do nothing against in terms of everybody's going to get older. Our family history, so that's immediate family, that's siblings and parents. So if it's in the family, that does greatly increase the risk of type 2. Our ethnicity, we can't control over that there. So people from an Afro-Caribbean, Southeast Asian background, so they have a lower threshold of developing type 2 diabetes. Um, some things we can alter is if we know we have high blood pressure, trying to bring that in to normal range as best as possible. And if we're carrying too much weight and our waist circumference is too large, these do play factors into increasing that risk of type 2. Other things to keep a note on is if we have kind of cardiovascular system issues like we've suffered from a heart attack and stroke, that does greatly increase the risk of type 2. Then I previously mentioned there gestational diabetes, so that's diabetes during pregnancy. Now this should disappear after the birth of the child, but what happens is there's a greater risk of developing type 2 later on down the line. So the mother will be getting tested annually for that there as well. Other things for females to take note on is polycystic ovaries, or during birth, the baby has a large birth weight, which is over 10 pounds. Our lifestyle choices as well. So smoking, we know that it is harmful for our cardiovascular system due to many factors, but particularly with diabetes, increasing our cholesterol levels and reducing that blood flow. Alcohol consumption, so trying to keep it within the recommended allowance of around 14 units a week and not having that all in one go or spread it out over 3 days really. Disrupted sleep. So if we have prolonged period of lack of sleep and a really poor quality sleep, that can put a bit of stress on our body. And stress and depression has also been linked to reducing the efficiency of our insulin. So another risk factor. I touched on this here as well. So ethnicity, so something that we can't control, but we do. Their studies have shown people from ethnic minorities, so like the Black African Caribbean, Southeast Asian, these minority groups are 2 to 4 times more likely to develop type 2 at a younger age and a lower BMI. So that threshold is a lot lower. So what to keep an eye out for? What is the symptoms? So this is a marketing campaign that we done many years ago, and it's really, really important. And we call it the 4 Ts. So if you notice you're going to the toilet really like excessively, and then doing so, if you're going to the toilet, then you're going to feel really thirsty and you're drinking a lot more. Now this isn't just a normal thirst; it's an unquenchable dry mouth. First, you can really do drink anything. So they kind of go hand in hand. So thirsty and going to the toilet. Then also the third one is feeling extremely tired. So lethargy, no energy to do anything whatsoever, and unexplained. You know, you don't know why that is. That could be another telltale sign as well. And then getting thinner without the kind of without the intention of to. So unplanned weight loss is another thing. So the reason behind these four is to do with high glucose levels. So if you're going to the toilet that little bit more, you're actually excreting out glucose through your urine. If you're feeling thirsty, you're trying to replenish those fluid levels. If you're feeling tired, well, if you think about it, all the energy is in your bloodstream and it's stuck in the bloodstream because insulin is not getting it to where it needs to go in the body and then thinner. So if you think about it, if we're excreting out that glucose, that energy, your body's going to use energy from a different source, i.e., your fat source, and that's why you're getting thinner without planning to. Then other things to note and keep an eye out for if you have kind of any bacterial infections, like of thrush and genital itching. Um, this is due to bacteria loving glucose. Glucose is an energy source to them. So that kind of goes hand in hand with slow healing wounds, cuts and wounds. And then finally, if you have blurry vision, now the reason behind blurry vision is because high glucose levels stretches the lens in the front part of your eye and kind of leaves yourself kind of with blurry vision. Now this should rectify itself 4 to 6 weeks whenever you put your glucose levels in the normal range. So we wouldn't be advising anybody to be changing the prescription of glasses during this time. So see those four T's, really, really good idea to keep an eye out for those and then those other factors as well. One of the major side effects of diabetes, particularly type 1, is something called DKA. And this is a very serious condition. And whenever your body goes into a diabetic ketoacidosis, you should seek immediate medical help as soon as possible. Um, this is what happens whenever the body has no energy, high sugar levels, and it starts to go under a process of ketoacidosis and your body starts producing ketones to try and get energy. But what happens is that leaves your blood highly acidic and it's highly dangerous. Um, some things to keep an eye how you would spot that there. There normally is like a smell, like a sweet kind of smell, and people once they become accustomed to what ketones smell like, they'll never forget it. Um, other things is blurred vision. They might lose consciousness, confusion, passing out, feeling really tired. Um, then they test themselves and they know they have high sugar levels. So in summary, talking about the two main types here, so they are quite different conditions, and you can see why it can be quite confusing. Um, we would get a lot of people through no fault of their own coming up to us in events and asking, "Oh, which one's a good type of diabetes and stuff like that there, or which one you need injections?" And the answer isn't as quite as simple as that there. Both are quite serious if they're not managed correctly, but both have different treatment routes, and I'll explain that there. So type 1, genetics play a small part, but type 2 is a massive, massive part. So if you know it's in the family, it's a massive indicator that it might be down the line for yourself. Type 1, you need insulin. So there's no insulin produced. So what happens is you are given insulin via injections or pump therapies. With type 2, you might be advised to change your lifestyle initially, with no medication, no insulin whatsoever, and then your healthcare team will see how that's going for yourself. But sometimes with somebody with type 2, their pancreas is progressively gotten worse and more and less efficient over time, and they might be introduced insulin straight away or given medication straight away. That does not mean they're type 1. Um, once you have type 2, you can't cross over as type 1 and vice versa. And that's one of the big misconceptions we would get. The onset with type 1 is very quick. It is usually picked up um, m- through, unfortunately, hospital admissions and stuff like that there, whereas type 2 is more of a slow progressive disorder. Um, it can be happening in the background, up to 10 years, and sometimes somebody isn't even showing any signs and symptoms of type 2. And the reason being is because of that progressive nature, and the symptoms haven't reached a threshold to show or reach the surface just yet. Age is a big thing. So mostly with type 1, it is normally picked up at a younger age, usually at children. But again, This is not always the case, and a small proportion of people do develop it in adulthood, whereas type 2 is normally over the age of 40, but we are seeing instances of lower age as well. So living with diabetes, so this is focusing on type 2 because type 2 is obviously the most proportionate, so about 90% of the population. And you can see here, this advice is nothing new to anybody that doesn't have diabetes. So it's general rule of thumb stuff. So managing our diet, making sure we're getting our vitamins and minerals from our fruit and veg, going for the higher fiber options in our whole grain beans and pulses. These are slow release carbohydrates, getting our fish for our heart health, and that plays in a role of our fat choices. So some of the cholesterol lowering, um, uh, improving the profile of our cholesterol and our heart health is looking at our more unsaturated fats, stuff that are usually liquid at room temperatures or plant-based stuff. Then you can notice there, we're not saying cut out altogether. If we take advice from the dietitians on the Eat Well guide, this stuff here is you're reducing it as best you can. But look, everybody deserves a treat here and there. So the red processed meat, we know this is high in saturated fat, and we'll have less of this. And to see the foods that are high in sugar and low in fiber, these raise our glucose levels a lot quicker, and there's a sharp rise. So replacing these here with higher fiber options. And then say, for example, if somebody does love sugary drinks, we would advise, water is the first line fluid, obviously, but if they want that kind of fizzy hit, going for the not zero options, sugary options, 'cause this will have zero effect on your glucose levels and your diabetes care. So then your saturated fat, so these raise our cholesterol levels. So we know diabetes has a massive link between cardiovascular health. So we want our blood vessels to be lower in cholesterol, lower in blood sugar. So that's why we want to reduce the saturated fats. So the likes of our cooking block fats or lard or ghee when we're cooking. Lifestyle changes in terms of our physical activity. So again, it's nothing different to anybody living without diabetes. So 150 minutes a week. Now you're breaking that up, looking at manageable chunks and what's good for you. So what are you capable of? So talking about maybe 5 days of 30 minutes of moderate intensity a week. Now that can be quite a lot to some people. So you're thinking about what can you do? What is your capability? You can manage it and break it down to 3 10 minutes of continuous moderate exercise. So 10 minutes would be kind of considered the shortest period of continuous moderate exercise to get that goal. Now, Christopher, what are you talking about moderate intensity? Well, that does look like as simply as a brisk walk. Moderate intensity, what it does to your body, you start to sweat a bit more, you start to get a bit warmer, but you still should be able to have a bit of a back and forth conversation with somebody if you're doing activity with them. That can be out gardening, a bit of swimming, finding, and all these recommendations are on the NHS website. Now, that might not be the goal for everybody. Some people might be more inclined to do the activity levels in a shorter period, so they'd be doing it at higher intensity. So that kind of cuts it down in half, or a combination of both. And then not forgetting a bit of strength-based exercises too to build up the muscles around the ligaments and joints to support movement. Really, really important as we get older to prevent the likes of breakage and falls and stuff like that there. So that can be strength is not usually people think it is just dumbbells and barbells and going to the gym, but it can be simply resistance bands, um, looking at options that you have in the house. You can see this gentleman, he has got 2 cans of beans. So all strength based, you're fighting against that resistance. Your muscles are getting stronger. So again, alternative strength based exercise can be found on the NHS as well. So we're going to discuss certain things. What happens when somebody gets their blood sugars too low? This is what is called hypo. So hypo is called a hypoglycemia. So this can quite come on quite quickly, and these signs and symptoms may differ from person to person or even hypo to hypo. But some of the key things to keep an eye out, they might start to make no sense in terms of the way they talk, or they might become quite emotional. They might go kind of very blurry, or sorry, I should say pale in the face, and you know they're flushed and they're just not themselves. They might lose consciousness. Um, so the treatment for this here does vary from person to person, what their own personal preference, what hypo treatment is. But normally it could be a small packet of quick-acting sweets like Haribo, or the small cans of Coke, full sugar Coke, not Coke Zero, or a small carton of orange juice. So it's good in the workplace if somebody has type 1 or type 2, that you know what their hypo supply is and where's it at, and having that conversation with your team leaders. So say for example, you notice your blood sugars are going low, taking that time out and going checking it, and maybe replenishing your sugar levels. Conversely, on the other side of that there, if your sugars get too high, it's something called hyper. Again, these signs and symptoms are very quite similar to somebody who's picking up diabetes for the first time. They're getting blurry sight, going to the toilet far more often, and particularly at night time. They're losing weight uncontrollably, not by their own choice. Feeling really thirsty, um, slow healing wounds, and then feeling really unwell as well. So the care to expect. So whenever you get the diagnosis of diabetes, um, you're going to be starting to go on a lot more appointments, and all these appointments, they're all testing for different things because diabetes just doesn't affect one part of the body, and I'm going to explain that in the next few slides. So you'll be getting a blood test. Now, this is a little bit different than a simple finger prick test. This is something called your HbA1c, and that is an average of your red blood cells and the sugar content on your red blood cells over the last 3 months. So a lot of people, when they're first diagnosed and they go for their HbA1c and think, right, goodness, I know I haven't been managing this correctly. The night before, I'm gonna cut down and really improve on my diet. But it doesn't really work that way because then you go into your healthcare practitioner and they can see an average and they give you an average indication how things have been. Then you'll be also go invited to see the podiatry team, and they'll be looking at your feet in terms of the sensation and the feeling below your feet, how you're looking after your toenails and making sure we still have blood flow for that sensation on the foot. We also go into the retinopathy, diabetic retinopathy team, and they'll be taking photographs, high-tech photographs of the back of the eye, making sure the retina is still in working order and there's no blockages there. Then normal kind of health checks, the likes of a blood pressure, cholesterol, or weight to height ratio in terms of our BMI, and looking at our smoking history, and then offering kind of smoking cessation services if that is something that somebody would be interested in doing for their health. And then also our kidney health as well. So there'll be urine tests and they'll be testing for any proteins that come up in the urine because that's an early indication of kidney disease. So all these all these kind of tests, um, they're not there to kind of scare anybody, because complications may happen, but they might not happen if they are kind of managed and kind of the diagnosis is got at an early time. So then you can put changes in play to reduce the risk of complications. But again, it's better knowing than not knowing. This is why we're talking about the diabetes. So again, I mentioned previously, it's not just to do with your blood sugars. If our blood sugars are high over time, it affects all parts of our body. So our eyes increases the risk of cardiovascular disease because if our sugar levels or glucose levels are too high, it restricts the flow of our bloodstream and makes them more sticky and stodgier. So that increases the risk of heart attack and stroke. Then also kidney disease, so damage to the kidney, nephropathy. And neuropathy is whenever our nerves are damaged. So you might have kind of pain in the hands and the feet and losing sensation. And maybe we've heard about kind of some of those horror stories of amputation, and that is that can happen in terms of maybe it's the complications get worse and worse over time. A simple thing could be somebody that has lost kind of the sensation in the bottom of the feet and they're walking around home in their bare feet and they maybe nip it on something, whether it be the child's piece of Lego or a wee drawing pin, and they think nothing of it because they can't feel it. Then over time, because it's such a slow healing wound, maybe starts to get an infection getting there, maybe a bit of ulceration, and then these steps or regressively get worse over time, and it can lead to amputation. Now, it's better getting the getting intervention early as possible to stop this here. Then sexual health problems in males, so the likes of erectile dysfunction, so that is to do with the reduced blood flow, and then with females and males as well in terms of genital itching and thrush. Final thing to keep an eye on is our oral health, so making sure we are being seen by the dentist on a regular basis because there's a higher incidence of developing gum disease. So you can see quite a lot of complications, and that's why we would never ever say um, type 1 is more serious than type 2 because
You're on mute.
hello, can you hear me again?
Yeah, that's it now.
Perfect. No, no problem. So why is awareness important? So getting that early diagnosis is so important. Um, it reduces the risk of developing these complications, as I mentioned. It's so important to know your own risk. So if you know the kind of the factors within your family, your age, then it's better to put in plans in place with your healthcare professional team. It's a very misunderstood condition, so we would get a lot of um, opinions given to us and a lot of stigma. And I want to touch on this here because this is kind of one of the main campaigns that we're talking about this World Diabetes Day on Thursday. So diabetes stigma is massive. And what it is, it's somebody projecting negative attitudes or beliefs or behaviors towards somebody because of their diabetes. So it can come from all types of places, media, whether that be on social media or reports from newspaper articles, friends, family, even healthcare professionals, or even other people living with diabetes. So it comes from all angles, and it's very common, and it can have detrimental long-term effects on somebody living with diabetes and their outcomes. Understanding more about diabetes is making assumptions that it does reduce that stigma. So some of the statistics, and they're quite high. 9 out of 10 people living with diabetes have experienced stigma. Two-thirds have hidden it from their friends and family. And anecdotally, I would find that quite often. So if I'm out doing talks to my local groups here in NI, a lot of them don't tell anybody or they don't want no photographs shown at all at them attending the sessions because they haven't told anybody. Then also half people living with diabetes they experience that isolationism, that kind of alone, and they don't feel like they've nowhere to turn to. So this is why we're um, trying to raise awareness on that stigma element of diabetes and trying to cut out um, anybody saying inappropriate that's not actually true to do with the condition, and that's why awareness raising is so important. So how we as a charity help? So we are a UK-based charity, so we're, as a UK as a whole, there's over 5 million of them, and that's massive numbers. So diabetes doesn't stop. It is relentless for somebody living with it. So we say we're relentless as well. And what we want to do, we want to create a world that does no harm to anybody. And there is no cure currently with diabetes, but the research that's going in the background from our charity is massive, trying to help people living with, but also obviously the main goal is to get the cure for diabetes. So some of our main aims is we want more and more people with type 1, type 2, and other forms to benefit from new emerging treatments that will cure or prevent the condition. We want more and more people to be in remission of type 2. So remission is whenever somebody puts their blood sugar levels into a um, safe region without the use of any medication. So then they'd be considered to be under remission, not reversed, but remiss. Then more and more people getting quality care to manage their diabetes well. And then again, get the numbers lower. We want people getting less type 2 and less gestational diabetes. Then finally, we want more and more people living more confident in their lives with diabetes, free from discrimination and stigma. So as a charity UK base, these are the type of the main things that we offer. So our helpline is a fantastic free service. It's the phone line is manned Monday to Friday, 9 o'clock to 6. And the helpline, for example, that would be an expert on the other side of the line to offer advice in something related to diabetes. It can range, between somebody looking a bit of advice on their work situation. They might have experienced some stigma or unfortunate treatment in work, or it could be the down to do with their driving license, and they want to ask some questions on where they stand. They might have lost their license. How do you get it back? Stuff like that there, or it can be the down to do with kind of their more healthcare specific questions. So again, there'll be an expert put on the other side of the line. There is an email as well if phone isn't your thing. We also have local groups here in Northern Ireland, and I'll explain where they are in the next slide. Um, the Diabetes UK website is a fantastic, really good service because there's a such thing as the support forum. So there'll be a topic of conversation on the support forum, and people kind of come together, gel together, and give their thoughts and feelings of it with the kind of guidance of the DUK as well. There's also a youth project here as well, so that is age between 11 to 25-year-olds. So you can imagine growing up that those teenage years are they're hard enough on their own, but throw in the mix of having type 1 diabetes, it can add a lot of stress to that young person and the family living with it. So the Together Type 1 project is an externally funded project, and it brings those young ones together, and they go to events together. Kind of take their mind off having diabetes and connect to other ones living with it. Or it's an opportunity for parents coming together and networking from other parents and learning how maybe some parent might have dealt with a situation in the past, and really does bond those families together. The Learning Zone is another good network to use because it's a free service and you can tailor um, the approach of what you want to learn. So, say for example, you really wanted to learn all about technology, you just wanted to focus on diabetes technology. There could be a module in that there, or if you wanted just to learn about type two, the learning zone, and you can tip away at it as much as you want, really. So here in Northern Ireland, our local groups are dotted across. So we've got kind of like fundraising groups around Northern Ireland. So we've got one in Dungannon, Strabane, in Enniskillen direction. We've got a family group in Oma, and we've got a family group in Coleraine, and we also have an adult group in Coleraine as well. Another service we have is something called a Live Well Hub. This is quite new. This is in the second year of a 5-year lottery funded project. And what a Live Well Hub is, it kind of brings together people living with type 1 and type 2, and somebody maybe at the risk of developing type 2 pre-diabetes, or family members. And they would meet once a month for an hour, get a cup of tea, cup of coffee, and they'd sit down and talk about a particular part of diabetes. There would be speakers that come to those on the regular. That could be a healthcare professional or somebody from the kind of charity and third sector, talking about something related to their health and diabetes related. We have those dotted across the NI as well. So there are in Bangor, Belfast, Ballymena, Lisburn, and then we have one in Mid Ulster. So again, we launch two of those each year. So in 2025, we're hoping to launch two more, and those locations will be announced on our social media pages as well. We have online peer support for people living with type 1. And then we'll also have a podcast. Everybody's on a podcast these days, so might be something that would be useful to somebody that just wants to maybe walking and they wanted to kind of listen to something in the background. So we've got a local NI voice podcast called Let's Talk Diabetes. That's fantastic. And then the next of this here on doing the day, so under workplace awareness, coming out and talking to workplaces. And then finally, family support. So this is kind of geared at younger families of children living with type 1. And we would take them away to days away. The last one there was over Halloween. We took some Waynes to the W5 and their families, and they had a brilliant time in terms of young ones coming together and seeing other ones with type 1 and realizing that they're not alone. And the connections made there are truly fabulous, really. And the kind of the the good that we get out of those events are that, they can't be underestimated. So we are a charity. We get no government funding, so we do rely massively on the generosity of our supporters, and that's how we get around and do the vital work we do here locally in NI. What it does fund, it's the research in the background. It's keeping the helpline going. It's helping those family events here in Northern Ireland, looking at the campaigns and support services in the UK. We couldn't have done any of the work that we've done over the years without that generosity of people. So some of our massive wins in the past is we funded the world's first insulin pen. So previously insulin, we had a diabetes specialist nurse talking about, and she was retired, and she's talking about, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, insulin was administered through a big, massive needle. This needle needed to be sharpened than each use, and it was extremely uncomfortable. So technology has improved leaps and bounds, even in the last 5 years. So we funded the world's first insulin pen, and then you know what? That's even progressed onto insulin pumps at the minute. So that's a big thing in the media at the minute. We're trying to get Northern Ireland caught up with the pump technology that's getting given across the UK and particularly England. Other technology that we help fund is the little handheld glucose monitors, and again, that there is a little finger prick test, but that there's progressed even further. And now, I don't know if anybody's seen anybody of the small discs in the arm, so they're scanning those discs, and that's what's called flash technology, and that tells you your blood sugar, an instant result of your blood sugar, so no finger pricks is needed if you have a flash technology. Some of the big things is making sure the people are getting better care during gestational days as well. So these, just at a glance, these are some of our big wins over the past. And again, we couldn't have done it without the fundraising help. So how do we do it? Some of the campaigns we run is getting involved in terms of some of the fundraising challenges, really. So the next of October, that was walk or run 62 miles of October. One of our most popular ones is Swim 22, and that is usually in this, at this kind of earlier part of the year, and that's the challenge to swim 22 miles. Other things, the likes of there's a 100 million step challenge, and all these can be found on our website in the fundraising page section of our website. Other things is, do it your own. Do your own thing. So a coffee morning, doing a physical challenge, like of a lap of the lock, a cycle, or a marathon. You can get your schools involved, so school assemblies, go blue for the day, raise money, talk to your employer. Consider us being the kind of named nominated charity, or you become a member on our website, and that can lead to playing our lottery or making a donation or remembering us by leaving a gift in your will. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for bringing me out this morning and talking to your workplace. How to get in touch is our local voices here in NI. That's our Northern Ireland email and website and a phone line. And again, if you want to get in touch, Owen can provide these details on to you as well. I would highly advise following us on our social media platforms as well, because we're quite prominent in putting up things that we're doing and some of the work that's going on. And if you ever wanted to attend some of our events, you're definitely more than welcome. So again, just thank you so much.